Welcome to Business Tips with Michael Tobian. Today we're going to be talking about coming up with a business idea. So I have experience starting lots of businesses and running a lot of businesses and selling a lot of businesses as a business broker. And I've had a chance to think through this mental process that you go through when you're trying to come up with a business idea. And I think a lot of people do it in a really inefficient way that kind of sets them up for failure. So we're going to be talking about that process. I'm not going to really be throwing ideas out at you like, why don't you start a car wash or a restaurant? I'm more going to be framing your mind for thinking about this in an efficient way so that you're not going to necessarily be failing with your business. Okay? So there are different ways and reasons businesses pop up. One, it might be for an investment reason. So maybe you get an influx of cash as a gift or in the will or something, or you have access to a really cheap loan and you want to use it. And so you say, hey, I'm going to start a business or buy a business, or you might even buy a non-controlling interest in a business like stocks or a non-publicly traded company that you wouldn't have any control. It's just a small portion of it. So that's an investment reason. There's necessity. That's a reason you might start a business. Maybe there is a need that you have personally and you are fixing it and realizing it's a business opportunity. This happens sometimes with businesses that they're solving a problem within their business and it actually turns into another business. Like sometimes with software. So they're creating a software for their company, maybe a CRM that is specific to their industry and their business. And then they start selling it to other companies. And often what happens in these situations is that solution to their problem ended up becoming a bigger business than their business was in the first place. So there's necessity, investment. Another thing is you may have a business idea already and you've always wanted to implement it and now you're just going to go ahead and implement it. But more often than not, people, I think, just want to start a business. Maybe they're sick of their job. They want to work for themselves. They're sick of making other people money. The American dream, whatever it might be, you might want to start a business, but you actually don't have an idea or a plan to go about doing it. And this can be kind of dangerous because you're so anxious to start a business, you might come up with a bad idea that's never going to work. Or you might come up with something good. So it's important to go through this mental process before you start the business and do it in the right way. I had sold a business for somebody. It was a side business, but their main gig was they were the CEO of a very large company. And in fact, it's a company you'd recognize. For confidentiality purposes, I can't disclose it to you, but it was a company that was recognizable. He had a little side business that I sold for him. And when I was talking with him, he was going over this concept that he came up with about this mental process that you go through and the order and priority that you should go through them. He told me, and I agree, that when people are going through this process, they usually start out with an idea and then they come up with a plan about how they're going to put together that business. Then they implement it. So they start hiring people, putting processes in place, buying equipment, whatever they're going to do. They implement the business idea and start it. And then they try to figure out how they're going to make money. Okay, so how do we price things? How are we going to do this? Who are we going to sell to? How is this product going to be sold? How is the service going to be sold? The problem with that is they're asking the questions in the wrong order. The most important question was put last. How are you going to make money? How are you going to monetize your idea? So he suggested to me that the best approach would be, of course, first come up with your idea, then immediately consider how you're going to monetize that idea. Then come up with your plan for the business and then implement it. The advantage of doing it that way is you're not necessarily going to fail. The other way, you could put a lot of work, spend a lot of money, and then to realize at the final parts of the process that your business cannot succeed. You didn't realize you couldn't make money doing it. People get so excited about an idea that sometimes they don't differentiate that a good idea might not necessarily be a good business idea. It might be a fun thing to do. It might be something you're really into, and that's great. It may be a great hobby for you, but it might not necessarily be a good business. And it's not going to be a good business unless you can monetize it. So consider that. Idea, immediately figure out how you're going to monetize it, then come up with your plan, then implement the plan. Let me give you an example. I had a friend who came up to me, and I don't know how serious she was about this, but she said, I have this great business idea. It would be great to start this indoor volleyball facility, where it was a sand volleyball facility, but it was indoor. And she said, I know this other place where they do this, and it's really successful and it's awesome. And we should do this. And I said, okay, well, let's go through this process. So I immediately said, we have the idea. Let's figure out how we're going to monetize this. We went through all the considerations, expenses. We're going to have to, build out a facility, or maybe we'll have to build it. I don't know. We're going to have to, what are the employee costs going to be? What are going to be the cost to run it? Electricity, things like that. We're going to have to fill it full of sand and put, there's going to be build out. What's that cost going to be? What's going to be our expenses every month? Now, we didn't do a deep analysis, but we kind of came up with an estimate on what we thought it would probably cost every month to run something like that. Then we said, okay, let's talk about the income. How much money do we want to make on such an investment? Well, if we're putting all this money in build out and spending this kind of investment in our time, we need to make at least X amount. Okay, that's reasonable. How do we make X amount of money? How much do we need to charge people to go to the facility, and how many people need to go there every day? Well, by the time we did the calculation of what was reasonable to charge people, it was an astronomical amount of people who had to be playing volleyball in this indoor facility every day. Now, in our community and our resources that we had, we felt that was absolutely futile of a business endeavor. Now, I'm not knocking indoor volleyball facilities or certain sand ones. I think it's a very interesting idea, and in some communities and with the right people in charge, perhaps that's a great business idea. But for us, it was absolutely not one, and we were absolutely going to fail if we were to proceed with that idea. So, again, I don't think she was serious, and we may not have even had the capital to do it. I don't know. But it was an interesting exercise in going through this mental process. Can you imagine how much of a disaster it would have been if we would have went through the process the way everybody always does it? Here's our idea. Cool. Let's plan it. Let's implement it. Let's buy the real estate or lease the real estate. Let's put all this stuff together. Oh, wait a second. We aren't even going to be able to break even on this business because there's not enough people in the community who want to play indoor volleyball every single day, again, in our community. So that's an example of not getting ahead of yourself in terms of potentially failing. Another example, which is a good example, is I started a little software company with a friend of mine. I don't have any software experience. He does. I have experience with implementing a business and selling and things like that. So that's where my expertise was. Expertise was with the software. So we started developing this software, and we really got ahead of ourselves. And we were going to do this, and the software was going to do this, and it was going to be huge and everything. But then we had to go back and consider, wait a second, how are we going to monetize this? We're getting ahead of ourselves here. And we immediately reconsidered a few things, and we limited our scope and really focused in on how we were going to make money with it. And anyway, it was also another good example of going through this process in the right way. Okay? Finally, I think one of the things you need to consider with your business idea is, what are your skill sets? You're going to be climbing up a very steep hill if you're going to go into business that you know nothing about. If I were to start that software company by myself without the expertise of my partner, I would absolutely fail. I'm not a computer software guy. I'm not a developer. Okay, I don't have experience with that. So I happen to be a professional musician. That's what I went to college for. I used to teach music at 2 different universities. I've written textbooks. I'm a professional musician on 4 different instruments. So I have some significant experience with music. So a lot of the businesses that I've started are in the entertainment space and the music space, and they've been quite successful, largely because I already have a ton of experience in that industry. And the other experiences I've learned on the way with business and with business brokery, which I have 12 years experience with that. So I've been able to expand my knowledge in things. But the first business I started was in that space that I had a lot of experience with. Thanks for joining us today. If you're interested in getting more tips on business ongoing, please subscribe below, and we will see you next discussion, where we'll be talking about 7 questions to ask yourself before starting a business. Have a great day.